Did you know there are 3 certainties in life? Death, taxes, and Curnow getting frees in front of goal.
Welcome to the Collingwood Rant. I'm Sly.
And I'm fuck Carlton, fuck off Spook.
Spook, we face the old enemy,
Time?
Carlton.
Them. I thought we agreed not to talk about them.
Alright, so let's look at a few things before we go into the game in detail. A lot of talk about Collingwood being flat following the game against Port Adelaide 2 weeks ago.
Is this commentary post the game or leading up, did you say?
Post.
No.
It's always post. At Collingwood, you don't have reasons. Anyway,
Because leading up, we're just going to win the flag.
Yeah. Oh, you'd take that, wouldn't you?
I'd take it every day of the week.
So, Port Adelaide actually looked a little bit flat against, who they play? Adelaide Crows?
Everyone lost this week. All the shit sides won.
Yeah.
Did I make that joke on Facebook once?
Probably.
Yeah.
But what do you think of that as a qualifier as to why we lacked a little bit of spark?
Not fucking good enough. Everyone else has the right to be flat, not us.
So, seriously, your answer?
Yeah. No, I think if you looked at it, if you had to look at it objectively, as fucking annoyed as I was on Friday night, and Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday morning, when you look at the results over the weekend, that was a fucking bizarre round.
Yeah.
There was a lot of the top 4 sides that really struggled. Now, you'd look at our game in isolation against Port. That was played in the wet. It was a very hectic game all the way throughout. Would have taken a little bit out of them. You had the 6-day turnaround. Am I making enough excuses? Carlton, on the flip side, they played. They had a training drill
Against
I believe.
West Coast under 12s.
Yeah.
Although West Coast did beat North, so...
And Carlton rested half their side. They were
Yeah.
that fearful of the might of West Coast.
Yep.
Yeah, when you look at all that in isolation and the way Port responded, they got belted by Tex Walker the other night.
Brilliant performance.
Imagine having a key forward that dominates.
Yeah, I know.
Don't
worry, you find them pick 9 in the draft.
You'd probably look at it and you'd objectively say, look, I think there's a number of factors here that led to that result.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, I think I said it to you, in 1990, toward the end of the year, we played Essendon, Collingwood and Essendon were the premiership favourites, and we smacked the crap out of each other. Essendon ended up winning. The following week, Hawthorn smashed us, and we looked really flat. And Carlton, who was shit back then, so not a lot's changed, but Carlton, they also beat Essendon. So coming off like a big game, which is being built up as a future grand final or possible grand final, you could see that potentially they might have become a little bit flat. The one thing I actually really noted, there was a play, I can't remember which Carlton player kicked it, but he was like only a couple of feet away.
I think his name was Sumsuck.
Well, he was only, Sumsuck was a couple of feet away from Nick Dacos, and Nick Dacos, all he had to do was like reach out and smother it, and all he did was sort of put his hands up. And I'm thinking, you look at earlier in the year against Adelaide, I remember that one where I think he socked it twice off the ground, and then some Adelaide player, grabbed it at half back, went to kick it, and Nick Dacos smothered it. And it's like, he looked to me like he lacked a lot of zip. He looked like, and that's actually happened the last couple of weeks, but this week particularly, he looked like he was really struggling to cover ground and all that. So I don't want to use that as a reason we lost, but like I wouldn't be surprised as a bit of a contributor. The other thing too, what do you think of the umpiring?
Why don't you tell me what I think of the umpiring?
I actually thought the first half it probably favoured us a bit more, and the second half it favoured them. This comes from Sam E, who volunteered this information from the bulletin board. I'm not going to go through every incident, but forward to the centre, the scores and frees. Carlton 6 goals, 1 from 8 forward frees, 5 of them to Curnow. And Colin got...
How far out of goal was he when they happened?
And I looked it up. I actually looked at this before that game. Curnow's on about 4... Now, he's on about 40 frees for... which is about 20 in front of anyone else as a forward, which is an obscene amount to think about the way Mason Cox gets treated and all that. Colin got nothing from 1 free up forward. And then just to go through some of them, free against Murphy for holding, hold not clear, Curnow waving his hands, arms in the air, clear obvious, 60 metres from goal. Curnow kicks in the forward 50, Motlop goals. Don't worry about it. I'm just going to look at the Curnow ones mostly. Free against Crisp, holding the ball, incorrect disposal. He gets tackled the moment he takes possession of it. No prize, swung. Fogarty kicks it behind. Free against Cock, ruck contest, arm over shoulder. Curnow leans in the Cox, height differential. Curnow kicks goal. Free against Moore for holding in the goal square, which Curnow initiated. Curnow kicks free, goal. Curnow pushes Moore clear in the back. Ball spills out back to Curnow. More tackles and Curnow lowers his knees and drops his head as he tries to break tackle. Clear holding the ball, paid too high. Curnow kicks, goal. You picking up a pattern here? Free against Moore for a hold. Martin versus Murphy and Curnow versus Moore in Martin contest. High ball kicked in. Martin has no eyes to the ball and clearly blocks Moore's run. Moore reaches out and scrapes Curnow's arms for a split second. Martin infringement play on, but Moore called for holding Curnow. Curnow kicks, goal. It's amazing that fuckwits like, and I'm just sort of jumping ahead a little bit, like Kane Corns and Anthony Hudson can highlight Ginnivan ducking, but there's nothing about fucking Curnow exacerbating any contact he gets in any contest. It's amazing. No, it's actually not amazing. It's typical of how selective media are in terms of who they pick. And Curnow's a fucking brilliant player.
Yep,
but geez, you know, and I'd love to have him at Collingwood, but geez, the way he's treated compared to the way other forwards are treated, it's just bizarro all. So that really, really frustrates me. Going back to the Collingwood Carlton game itself, actually reminded me a lot of the King's birthday game that, you know, we started, looked like we were fucking going to roll over him in the first 5 minutes. Big fucking thumbs down to McCreary. How you fucking miss a goal from the top of the goal square. And I'm a big believer in small things, they determine the way the momentum influences and all that sort of shit. And you think, like, he kicks that with 3 goals up, they're nothing. You just start to sort of change the way players are thinking about it. They're starting to think, oh shit, this is what happened last time and all that sort of stuff. You miss something that blatant and it's like, holy fuck. You know, players just going, well, fuck, are these guys on? And that's really frustrating. From that far out, there's a really good mark and you fucking dropped it. And then Carlton just dominated us. Third quarter, we really came at him, but fucking just didn't convert. Which, you know, you look at like what we did against Port Adelaide. We kicked 6 straight, a lot of them from difficult shots. I think the only easy one was the Bobby Hill one straight in front. But, you know, all the others like from the boundary, Nick Dacos out from, you know, long distance. That's not always going to happen. We didn't kick ourselves back into it. And Carlton just kept us at bay. Actually, they didn't keep us at bay. They extended the lead in the last quarter to 6 goals, and then we brought it back down to 3 goals. So,
and to a point, we dominated that third quarter.
Yeah, well, we killed that third quarter.
Just couldn't fucking convert. And that's that old adage about bad kicking is bad footy. It doesn't matter what you do. If you don't convert and score, then it's all for naught. Well,
let's go back to this too, because we were talking about this earlier, and we've brought it up. Let me put you in a hypothetical situation. You get
a slight hypothetical.
You get to sit down with the leaders of the club, and you look across the table from them and say, I'm a little bit concerned by the fact that we're constantly giving up these leads and having to come back. What would you expect the club's response to be?
We're 16-3. I enjoy your passion. Why aren't you just enjoying the games? No. We're winning, aren't we?
How much of a methodology is that for going forward?
It showed last year in the final series that it doesn't work come finals. I think we've fallen into a bit of a habit of conceding this average of 3 to 4 goals and then reeling sides back in. Not all the time, but it's enough to be a sort of concern that I don't want that same pattern. Look, it was immaculate to watch last year, but it didn't fucking help at the end when it counted. I don't want to go into that sort of mode again where we sort of just stop.
See,
concede a lead and make it a fight.
Well, one thing with McRae Ride is everyone's going to exhilarate the way we play it, but a big part of that is the constant comebacks. So I think that actually inflates the way we look at this side, because for a lot of the 2 years, and this is not a slight at McRae because I never thought we'd get this far, but for a lot of the 2 years he's been coach, you look at games, you break it down and go, for 60-70% we do fuck all. And then we have to come back into 30-40%, and we have to come from behind. Very few times have we actually just dominated or controlled the game from the beginning. And going into the finals, you'd think this is what we need to start doing. But right now, you could swear that it's round 2 or 3, and we have no fucking idea what our best makeup is.
That's the bit that really gets to me. There's a few of the boys that I messaged with post the game we're talking about positional changes and who can come in and out. And you're thinking, you shouldn't be having these discussions this late in the season.
Well, I think...
Look, as much as Sly loves to say... Sly? As long as you like to say stuff. Fly says... we're a work in progress, and at this stage the work should be slowing down because you should know what this side looks like that you want to take into the next few weeks. We shouldn't be toying with it at the level that it needs to, or it looks like it needs to be toyed with.
Sorry, and I'll antagonise that one fuckwit who said, "Oh, you guys are so negative after one loss," by saying this. I actually think the club made a grave mistake, and this does go to the power brokers like McRae and Lippic and all that. That when you had long-term injuries, guys like Lipinski, McStay, Howe, and even Hoskin Elliott, who's only been out for like 3 weeks or something, but all those guys should have come back through the VFL.
Yeah, it's odd that they've come straight back in.
And they've come straight back in. Lipinski's struggling. McStay's actually doing okay, but, he's not dynamic or anything. And since McStay's come in, Cox's form's just gone totally out. So obviously that combination isn't working. But Anzac Day, if you go back to that game, we had Trey Rusco and Will Kelly in that team that won at Anzac Day. So surely those young guys, not those two specific guys, but when we had those injuries, we should have fucking brought these guys in and given them a chance. We should have given Finley McRae a look at the midfield when De Goey was out for 3 weeks. We should have experimented more with Frampton up in defence. They've been juggling it around, and it's like you don't know what your best side is. Throwing Howe up forward to me is an admission that your forward line, despite the recruitment of McStay and Hill, you still don't know, and the fact that Ginnivan can't get a game, you still don't know what that forward line looks like. And you're taking Cox off in half a game and all that sort of stuff. You have no idea what that looks like. And people say, well, this is where you should experiment. But as you said, round 20, you'd be thinking, we need a much better indicator of what this side's going to look like going forward.
Yeah, and you really don't feel confident that you're going to formulate that in the next month. You can tweak it, and you're going to have to tweak it because... you don't want to take away from it was a meritorious win against Port, but there were still deficiencies in that game.
But that's like most of the games we win.
And then they're exposed clearly against the Blues. Took great advantage of them. It's just like I'm not sure where we're at in terms, and apart from the big number at the top of the ladder. That it's just too many sort of unknowns about what the makeup of this side is meant to look like.
There's a lot of questions now. Mitchell's really struggled the last few weeks, so I don't know if he's carrying something or not, but
certainly at the side.
He struggled. Adams' disposal was deplorable.
Oh, yeah.
So that hasn't been remedied in any way. Nick Dacos, Josh Dacos, they're smaller players. So against sides like Carlton, which have big mids, they're just getting out-bodied. Pendlebury, still has some poise to some extent, but he's 38 years of age or whatever he is, 41. De Goey hasn't been the same since he got reported suspended. And I know he might be coming off a virus. But that midfield, the fact that you sort of can't find a good combination at this point. Lipinski's really struggled. Sidebottom has only just come back from a long-term injury also. So these things should have been bettered down to some extent. And they really have no idea of the way it looks. And people say we're being negative and maybe we'll just switch it on and all that sort of shit. I think one of the issues with this side is when it's up and running, everyone looks great. But when that run stopped at the engine room, you don't get other players sort of stepping up. You don't get a Curnow who's going to go, I'm going to kick a big bag, regardless of the fact that the rest of you are struggling. You don't get one mid like Cripps has done for years at Carlton, just picking up the whole side. It's really and as you've pointed out in the past, you're relying on this 19-year-old kid to do a lot of that heavy lifting, and he looks... We can't forget, this is only his second year. So he's at mid-40s in terms of games. Expecting him to do a lot of the heavy lifting, which is just, I don't know.
It's amazing though when you look at his numbers at the end of the game, Nick. What he finished with that 28 possessions, 6 clearances, a couple of goal assists and stuff. Yeah, the output was there. The output was there of your generally good rated mid. But you'd look at his game, and they're probably the same to a certain extent last week, and you go, well, it's not up to the usual standard.
No.
That's because his fucking standard's stratospheric. It's amazing about you look at it and you go, okay, well, I feel like you should be critical, but at the same time, he's fucking miles ahead of the pack. It ain't funny. It's a hard one to... It's not really critiquing, but comment on.
But the thing... Look, I'm not criticising him, but this side, to be a premiership threat, the way it's been built, it actually is relying a lot on him. Now, whether they can't fit him to go in that same midfield, because since De Goey came back, Nick's influence has sort of diminished too. So I've seen people say, do we turn the half back? And it's like, oh, well, he's your best mid, so why would you put him back at half back?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
I would rather play De Goey at full forward if that's going to be the issue.
I think just, we talked about this the last couple of weeks, that you really want to keep the De Goey, Dacos mix going in the middle. And synergy isn't built overnight. It's going to take, probably quite a few games before they start to gel.
Yeah.
They've only played together in this role for 4 games or something.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's a little bit premature to look at it and say it should be firing 100%. But the thing is, I think the rest of the midfield should be picking up some of that slack.
Well, that's the big problem.
It's that whole thing about too much is being left to too few.
Mitchell's really been flat and bad for a few weeks now. And again, I'm not sort of saying like let's chop him or anything, but you got to work out what's going to be the best synergy. Adams, his attack on the ball is brilliant, but his disposal of the ball at times is just, it breaks chains, it really flattens you. And the way modern football's played, where it's basically a rush. When you have the ball, everyone just rushes forward. So one turnover and everyone's now out of position. And the opposition, you can just go back the other way. And all our players are 10 metres off where their opponent should be. So
it wasn't like disposal across the board. I thought was pretty shit house. Like Moore,
it's been like shit the last couple
Moore
of
was
times.
almost best on ground for the Blues there.
Why the fuck does he kick out though? Surely it should be a target for the kick out.
You would think so. That baffled me. But going back to look, I think you got 2 sort of things that came out of what we were just talking about. There is one, the disposal and shots on goal was shit house. You would think going back, if they were fatigued from the previous week, that would impact the ability to kick. Whether there's something in that or not, or whether it was just a completely shit day. The thing is, I look at it, from the perspective of, you can be down by, 6, 8 players in a side, and that tends to drag everybody down.
Yeah.
But you generally have good performers still performing well. The thing that struck me on Friday night was just how universally across the board that level was all consistently down. No matter who it was, there was no real standout or anything. They all dropped.
But that's again goes to what I say. When that core's functioning well, then everyone goes along for the ride. When that core's not functioning, it exposes a lot of players as being deficient or just really good role players. Like you go back to the 03 side, for example. You look at that grand final. We beat Brisbane 2 weeks earlier in the qualifying final. And it really gave us a sense that we could beat these guys. You took Rocker out and the whole structure collapsed. And players like...
It's like watching pickup sticks. You just pull that one thing out and the whole thing.
And that's what it was. Is like, you had Ben Kinnear looked like a really good third forward in the second half of that year behind Rocker and Tarrant. You took Rocker out and suddenly he was exposed and it just, all of it didn't work. And it's very... My issue, and I've been saying this for 18 months, and I wish I could have said it to the club, is... you've had this fast turnaround, so you haven't had a chance to just pillage the draft as clubs like Carlton have done. So you're bringing in players who are like just really good battlers, like McStay, And this is the thing is sort of coming up with a few people in discussion, is you look at like Sydney, they got Buddy Franklin, we got Jesse White. You look at Richmond, they got Tom Lynch, we got Dan McStay. We always seem to be looking for the money ball options. And there's a reason those gun players are gun players, because they perform when it matters. Like I said, McStay's been okay, but it kills me that you bring McStay in and then Myercheck's struggling, Cox is struggling. Before that, Myercheck was okay and Elliott was doing really well. So they can't get that chemistry right. And they, if you don't have... I think they really lack some dynamic small forwards too. Like, Elliott and Hill... Hill's a really good small forward. Elliott still plays like a lead-up forward to a large extent. He does some stuff when it hits the ground, but you really need that Didac, Medhurst type who's just going to capitalise on any half opportunity.
Yeah.
And, McCreary just doesn't get enough of the ball, and I'm still really... I said it before, I'm really pissed off at that miss, because that's just fucking unforgivable.
He got the next one, though.
Yeah, well, that's when the scorer totally turned around. So, I don't... And then the defence also. So what do you do with Howard? Do you put him back in defence? Do you leave him up forward? If you leave him up forward, then who goes out? Because surely you can have McStay, Myercheck in there. I think Cox will go because they're just playing too tall, so they're going to bring in potentially Johnson. But if they leave Howe up there, they don't need Johnson.
No, that's the thing. And I look at the moment, and I think it's just pure experience and ability. I'd leave Howe in the forward line and let's put Johnson to bed for probably the rest of the year.
Well, he's been re-signed for 2 years.
Unless there's injuries. But this is the perfect opportunity to get Frampton back in the side and get him up back.
Yeah, so you know who I like, and I wish he'd stayed upright, was Kruger, because the one thing of Kruger is at least he sees a pack and he just runs through it. And I reckon you need a bit of that physicality, because it just makes that should be McStay, but he doesn't actually do it.
You get the impression that Kruger's on the nose.
Oh, look, I have no doubt the club's marked his papers, which I think is really unfortunate, because he just sort of had a really bad run. And the thing with Kruger's also, and this really shits me if he is chopped, is you look at him last year, he did his shoulder, and the club said, well, let's nurse him through it. And then he did it again. So he didn't do 2 injuries, he just redid the same shoulder, which they thought he could carry through the rest of the season. And they proved, well, no, he actually can't. And then this year, he did injure himself again, like in the pre-season. But then because of the injuries to Cox and to Cameron, and just and McStay did his finger, it was like they rushed him back well before he was ready, because they needed some height. And, you know, he copped a hit and then he was out again. It's like, okay, he's been getting injured a few times, but the times you've played him, 2 of the times you've actually played him, he was nowhere near fit. And you asked him to carry a load, he tried to carry it and he broke down. And it's like, oh, well, he's fragile. Well, I don't think he's fragile. I think your choices are fragile. Yeah, Frampton, I think, has to play in defence. I really wish they were harder. Sorry, I'm going to keep saying, I don't see what value Hoskin Elliott brings with that return of, what did you look it up? Was it 3 possessions?
3 possessions.
Oh, that was a good sub. Super sub.
Well, that's it. I mean, Cox went off with 3 possessions and they brought a bloke in who achieved the same levels of superiority.
Well, Cox actually kicked a goal, didn't he?
Did he?
Yeah, pretty sure he did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't see...
There's a lot of this game I don't choose to remember.
This is one thing that frustrates me. By bringing in Lipinski and Howe, McStay, and all these guys, just bringing them straight back in, you are undermining the selection process. So these guys, Lipinski was out for the whole first half of the year. McStay was out for effectively most of the first half of the year. Howe was out for pretty much the first half of the year. Meanwhile, you got guys slaving their guts out in the reserves, and they can't get a look in, and these guys just come in after 10, 12 weeks out, which I think would have sent a really bad message. I can understand you might have done it with one, you know, but to do it with all 3 of them, and in doing it, and I'm not disagreeing with these ones, but doing it then with side bottom also, and, you know, the go is out. I'm not saying you would play the go in the reserves, but you got a whole swath of these players now coming back with very little game time behind them. It's like, how many of these guys can you actually bring back and expect to fire?
The thing is, but they haven't too. They're just plateaued.
Yeah.
They're just doing enough, and you expect more from players of this ilk and this seniority. I think that was the whole intent, was to bring them back in and have seasoned campaigners hit the track running. I just don't think it's worked the way I think that they imagined it was going to work. But we seem to be persisting with it. I don't think we're going to really change all that much now. I don't think he's going to shake the side up all that much.
No, I don't. But this is where I'm disappointed. I would have rather lost a match or 2, getting some games in the Will Kelly or Trey Risco or Phil and whoever the fuck deserved it. Rather than just sort of going, you know what, let's just bide our time and then bring these guys back. And like Lipinski was brought back, and I know they're bringing him back to offer a bit of experience in that Melbourne game where they've lost so much Sydney experience. But I would have preferred they just went up to fucking Philly McRae or whoever and just said, "Is your chance? Go for it." There's a there's a final spot up here for grabs. You fucking take it. You'll keep the other guy out. And we haven't done it. And I said this before. You go back to 210. Start of the year, guys like Lockyer and O'Brien and Josh Fraser, they were in the starting 22. By the end of the year, they were all out. And you sent me a thing from Malthouse, a quote.
Have you got it?
No.
Can you put it up?
Yeah, there it is. No. But him just saying it was one of the hardest things you had to do, to leave these players out. Lee Matthews did it in 90 when he left out Brian Taylor. Although, in retrospect, Lee, good one. And Ronnie McEwen. These are the hard decisions you have to make, but this is like, you're playing all these guys and they're not actually giving you much value. And you haven't exposed the younger guys to be reserves or contingencies. So, should we get another couple of injuries?
It's
very
much the deep end.
Yeah, very good. And then you're throwing Carmichael, and Phil McRae broke his thumb too. So, you're throwing someone like Carmichael.
Another finger injury.
Yeah, well, it's a thumb injury.
Thumb,
yeah. Any final thoughts about this game? Like David King said, Nick Dacos is selfish.
Gee, that's a turd of a comment. That one, that really fucking bugged me, because in that footage in isolation, he showed 2 instances where Nick's backed himself and had a shot at goal. probably 9 times out of 10 he would have nailed that. I'd back him every fucking day of the week to snap that rather than hand it off to some stooge who was probably going to miss at any rate. You can't look. You can have it sort of both ways. I think that sort of thing. You can do the team thing when you need to do the team thing, but at times, and we often lament the players that don't back themselves. They run into an open goal or whatever and dish it off to somebody because reasons. Sometimes you just got to back yourself and just and have a crack. And I don't mind the way that Nick goes about it. I think to actually at this point in the season pull 2 fucking incidences out and say I think he's being selfish. That's just a headline grab, and I expect better from King. He's generally a pretty impartial sort of commentator. I think that was fucking wide of the mark.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think the great players. So I'll look at Peter Dacos. The great players know when to go and know when to lay off. And sometimes you got to be a little bit selfish and go for it. Jamie Elliott, instead of fucking, having a deliberate rush behind on the goal line and you turn around and kick it 15 metres backwards to fucking Myercheck who misses. You need players just to say sometimes, I'm taking the responsibility to do this. It's my responsibility. I don't want to fucking lay it off. I want the ball. So, I agree with you. And it's one of these things, if you actually kicked it, would it still be there?
Yeah, you look at the 2 ones that highlighted, they didn't miss by all that much.
Yeah. So, it's one of those things you're sort of damned if you do, and if you didn't go for it, they probably would have turned the narrative around and said, oh, well, Nick Dacos, if he wants the big moments, he has to take that responsibility on himself and have a shot.
Yeah, the other thing that bugged me with that was I'm sure I got this right. His opening statement was, you either want to win a Brownlow or you want to win a premiership. You're more likely going to win both. So what was the fucking point of it all?
I don't know. It's David King. Speaking of doofus points, Kane Corns.
Well, tell me what it is that you've got there.
All right, so let's lay the groundwork. There's a marking contest where Matthew Owies for Carlton blocked Nathan Murphy, and Murphy just rebounded off him and flopped to the ground. And,
I know this one.
And someone on X, it's not Twitter anymore, on X said, well, I hope, sarcastically, I hope Murphy recovers from this shattering blow. And then Kane Corns has retweeted it, re-X'd it, whatever the fuck you want to call it. And his quote with it is, costing teams goals and players weeks. So that's his condemnation of Nathan Murphy.
He's just an absolute, nothing but a troll now. Like, he's always been a troll, but now he's just actually taken that game up to a new level. You don't make comments like that. You
shouldn't be editorialising like that.
Anyone with half a fucking brain cell wouldn't make a comment as dumb as that. But then half a brain cell, I'm probably being generous here. Well, do we even know there is an existence of a brain cell?
I actually
as NASA put a probe into his ear. Yeah, it just echoes. It's just a void.
I've heard it try to get in through the black hole.
It's just a dumb comment. And the comment is just there, and it's worked effectively because we're getting pissed off about it. It's just there to fucking annoy people.
No, actually, I'm not getting pissed off at it. I actually look at this comment and think it really showcases what a fucking idiot you are. Because let's look at the first half of this comment. Costing teams goals. This might come as a surprise to you, Kane, but he's a defender. That's his job, to cost the opposition goals. He's actually trying to stop the opposition. So how are you condemning? Oh, fuck. Look, Nathan Murphy stopped the opposition from scoring. How dare he? That's his job, you twat. And the player's weak. So the Rioli one, we talked about this last week. You could see Murphy was fucking dazed. He was sitting on the ground dazed. And he's saying costing players weak. So obviously he's referencing Caminiti from St Kilda.
Who got rubbed out incidentally again this week.
But, yeah, and let's look at this. So, Murphy cost Caminiti 3 weeks, the suspension was, by flopping. This was fucking a Mission Impossible grand level of subterfuge because Murphy also got himself subbed out, and he also missed the following week, Anzac Day, with concussion protocols. So, did he fake all that just to get fucking Caminiti rubbed out, you twat?
Maybe that's what he's talking about, where he said costing weeks.
Will he fucking comment about, at the time of recording this, he hasn't had an opportunity to, but will he comment about the trouble Port Adelaide is in for not putting Aaliyah and Lockie Jones through concussion protocols when they both ran into each other? You could see the way Aaliyah fell, that he was lifeless as he fell, he was limp as he fell. And Port just sent him straight back out there as far as we're aware.
This will somehow be Murphy's fault because Murphy's flopped.
Oh,
That
well,
clearly Alir's he's flopped as well because Murphy gets away with it. He'll twist it somehow.
yeah,
He won't say a fucking thing about this incident.
It would be interesting if
He'll
does it.
be baited on it, but he'll just say, "Oh, I think the AFL's got this one wrong." You
Yeah.
know, you've got to trust in the doctor,
Okay.
Dr. Nick.
You can, basic on the way they adjudicate concussion and shit like that, the way Alir felt, you could see there was no... It was like a boxer being knocked out. He was out.
Yeah.
And the way Lockie Jones was laying there, and you just sort of saw the way his head came up, and he had no idea. And under concussion protocols, those two, and the commentators, to their credit, they were saying it was like, I don't see how these two are coming back on. And yet, Lockie Jones was subbed out with a migraine. Not concussion protocol, he was subbed out with a migraine. And Alir came back on like 7 minutes later. So
I think the problem is it's all Musk's fault, obviously, because the first guy had Tweety birds around him, and you could see them. The X's around Alir, we didn't know what that was at the time. It had, the conversion hadn't happened. I think that's probably what Kane will come back with.
yeah, he's a road squalor. Eddie
Very
Maguire.
underrated joke, that one.
Yeah, Eddie Maguire suggests a Sunday night grand final.
Did he? For
Yeah.
who?
Oh.
What, the local Heathcote tennis club tournament? What?
For the AFL.
Why does he come out with these statements?
I'm glad he's not president, because when he was saying this shit as president,
You don't get
he's
Brown
representing
saying
the club.
those sorts of things.
Those taunts and things.
Jauncher things.
Yeah.
Chaucer things.
You know, I want to turn his teddy bear into a premiership trophy for you, Spook.
What about this nut bowl?
Yep. So, what do you think about a Sunday night grand
Yeah,
final?
you can stick that right up your clacker, Maguire. Not interested.
You know what worries me too, because like Jeff Brown's touted, we need to get Eddie on the AFL commission and shit. It's like, no, when you hear
Wants
this
to
stuff,
destroy it.
yeah, from the inside. Big congratulations to Collingwood's VFLW side, who have reached the pinnacle of achievement by losing the grand final to Port Melbourne, no less.
Golf clap.
Yep. So, it's amazing. What else do they have left to achieve at the club?
Well, they only lost because they had to play on Port's home ground.
Yeah, I heard they played there 110 years ago.
Do we have a better raft of supporters who provide any form of excuse when required?
I don't know. Playing Hawthorn, who I saw the start of the game against St Kilda. St Kilda kicked like 9 goals in the first quarter.
Don't see this game. I saw the last couple of minutes.
So yeah, St Kilda kicked like 9 goals within the first quarter. So they were miles up, and then Mitchell obviously ripped into Hawthorn, and they got back to within about 11
Tom
points.
Mitchell did.
Yeah. So yep, and Hawks got back to within about 11 points, and then Saints just pulled away and won by 7 goals. So you think, what sort of game would this be? Because we just beat them last year.
Oh, I think we'll account for them pretty comfortably. If we're serious. Like I said last week, I think we're going to learn a lot about ourselves over the next 5 weeks. Well, we learned 2 valuable lessons. One is good and one was bad. I think, though, this one, we've got, an 8-day break coming into this game. We should be well and truly
So you don't think it'll be flat?
rested. I don't think we'll be flat. I think they'll have the bike pump out this week. They'll pump a few of them up.
What changes did you make? I don't think Cox will stay in the seniors.
No, I don't think so. And this is probably I don't know any Hawthorn players apart from
Mitchell Lewis,
and
Michael Tuck.
yeah, Michael Tuck was one of them. The blonde guy used to take the big marks.
Yeah, Don Scott.
Don
also,
Scott.
no, Peter Knight's your
Peter
finger.
Knights, yeah. But I mean, it's going to come down to matchups with some of them. But
Well, like John Newcomb's done really well for him. They got like some midfield. I mean, they got potential.
did they trial a new ruckman or something this week, or has someone debuted? Or did I see
Max
that?
Lynch? I don't know.
No, I don't know. No, it's Brody Holland on Facebook. He plays for the Bull Ants or something, which I think Holland coaches or something now. Was congratulating on his debut for Hawthorn, some skinny ruckman.
Okay.
So yeah, look, I think you could well and truly say goodbye to Cox this week.
Yeah. Well, okay. And what else would you do? I mean, House they saw.
Well, I think Hill has to come in. I think that we do miss that sort of pacey run. There's been talk, I think, from the presses the last 2 weeks from Fly that he's all about injecting pace back into the side with the substitutions. Maybe we should try and do that at the start of the game. Get some pace in there.
Yeah.
Kick ahead. So I think maybe this week that'd be an opportunity to bring some hard running in.
I said it earlier in the year. I'd rather see Markov in Noble's role than Noble. I don't mind. Look, when I make these comments, I don't want players, like, I'm not saying let's get rid of these players forever. If they earn their spot
So
back,
you want to
they
get
earn
rid
their
of him
spot.
forever?
Yeah, why not? No, but I really think there should be selection integrity. I think there's players we tend to flatter because we look at their good side. It's you have this thing, like, and we just talked about this years ago. Sidebottom used to do some deplorable things, but no one ever looked at it. And he did one nice thing, and people going, "That's how great he is." And you had Ben Sinclair, who might do a lot of nice things, but the moment he did one bad thing, he was terrible. And you get players like that. And I think there's a few players in the side at the moment who get flattered a little bit by their good things. And in terms, I've said this for years too. Can we stop recruiting people under 180 centimetres unless they have some super freakish talent? We get a lot of players in there who are just sort of small-bodied, light. They get bustled out of contests.
Content.
Yeah. Well, we're getting busted out of So we need players who, like, I got size around the ball. And that's the way the game's always gone. Players are getting bigger and stronger and all that sort of stuff. So Nick Dacos is obviously a small player, but he reads the play freakishly. So, okay, great. But sometimes we bring in these other smaller guys, and I think, what are you actually offering that's going to elevate you at this level? And I don't see, they might be really competent in everything, but at the AFL level, being competent isn't good enough. You need to be proficient at something.
So who are the superstar performers in the VFL this week?
Well, Ash Johnson did really well, and Will Kelly did really well.
Kicked 4-4, I saw Ash.
Yeah, and
Will Kelly kicked 3.
Yeah, he got 20 possessions.
2 or 3 or something.
Yeah, well, he's not going.
He's
gone.
Do you think any of them will come back in this week?
I think Howe kicking 3 goals will give them a look at, like, let's look at what Howe, McStay, Myercheck, McCreary, and Hill. Is that 6 or is that 5? 5. And whoever else I've left out and Elliott looks like. And I think
Hoskinelli would have done enough this week to stay in.
Well, if the metric is 3 possessions, yeah, he's done more than enough.
You had 100% disposal efficiency, though. You're fucking harsh on the poor bloke.
No, look,
He actually could have had more. You just don't see them. Did the ball just, like, appear on the TV to be just doing strange things, like it was being controlled by an invisible force?
Hoskin, look, I've said it before. If he earns his spot, great. I don't think he's earned his spot, and I think he just keeps getting selective because they want some senior bodies in there, and he runs the defensive lines well, but offensively, it's like, what does he bring to the team? And the thing that shits me is he'll do one thing. Again, this is what these things. He'll do one thing. He'll kick a goal, and people go, that's why he's in the side. Great, 1 goal every 4 games. That's a good fucking average that we want. You need, as McRae would say, we want to get better. You're not going to get better by playing the same plays every week. Where's the improvement coming from? And usually the improvement comes from underneath, and that hasn't happened. I know we've had like some recruits come in and all that sort of stuff, but I really would want to look at like guys like McGuinness and that long term rather than continuing with, Hoskin unless he really warrants that position, and he doesn't. I said, 2018, I was saying, I like it. He was kicking a goal every week at least, but I was saying he's not getting enough of the ball. He's actually gone backwards from that. So, and the thing with Hoskin is he has all the fucking skills. It's just he doesn't put them together meaningfully.
No, totally agree.
Any last thoughts on this matchup?
No, other than I think we should comfortably lose this by 10 goals.
Well, it's interesting because you pointed out that Carlton has a really easy draw. We actually have after this Hawthorn game, we have a pretty tough draw.
Yeah, well, yeah.
English your first language?
No, I was just trying to think about it in my head, which we don't have that much time.
Hawthorn, Brisbane, Geelong, Essendon.
No, it's Hawthorn, Geelong.
I don't know.
Brisbane,
I just shouting him out, yeah.
And then Essendon.
Yeah.
Essendon's, geez, they're patchy. Cats, are they gonna? They lost to Freo at home. That's a fucking big loss. In the scheme of things, it'd still be a mathematical chance to make the 8. They can't make top 4, surely.
No, they won't with that loss. Given the teams above them, St Kilda has a pretty easy draw.
It's going to come down to, I think, a week-by-week motivation about where teams can possibly sit. I don't think pride, when you've come off winning a flag and you're not going to make finals, isn't going to make you lift any harder. And they love their Mad Monday. They'd be planning that already, wouldn't they, Geelong? It's on the news every fucking year. Oh, look, someone's dressed as Fred Flintstone. Ha, ha, ha.
Someone's dressed as Will Hoskin Elliott.
Well, 3 of them were, but you weren't sure where they were drinking.
Essendon got smashed last week.
Yeah, they were well and truly accounted for by Sydney, but the Sydney let them back in this week.
So the thing I was going to say is like Essendon, when they've had some hard tests, they've been smashed. The only one that I think they passed was the Melbourne game earlier in the year.
I think we should win all fucking 4 games.
Well, I was going to say...
And make a statement going to the finals.
Essendon and Geelong's proven this the whole year. I mean, Chris Scott can run around going, oh, we're the danger and all that, but every time you've been put to the test, you fucking lost. And some of them you've lost embarrassingly.
Well, they've lost Hawkins to hamstring, so he'll be out for our game, I think. Yeah. Although, generally they make a fucking miraculous recovery the night before we play them.
But I was just going to say, Brisbane's a different matter. Brisbane, I know they lost to Gold Coast, but generally they've been competitive.
They're flat.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, they had played Port like 21 weeks ago. Over there too. No, what I was going to say is teams like Essendon and fucking Geelong, if you're serious, you should just be accounting for them comfortably. Geelong is struggling. I mean, they're obviously struggling. They're outside the fucking 8. So that's not up for the debate wherever they're struggling. Like Essendon, every good team has actually just accounted for them relatively easy. So those two we should win. Hawthorn we should actually win. Brisbane, that's the tough one, particularly because it's at Marvel.
Yeah.
But I don't want to fucking be seeing 3-4 goal comebacks. How long does that last? And I think the one thing with Carlton, I reckon Voss pulled them aside and said, look, you can't protect this lead because they're going to come at you. You need to fucking extend this lead. So keep playing away. And they did. They extended the lead and then we brought it back. So I think clubs are also going to realise, because clubs are tended to panic. When we start coming back, they don't know what to do. Whereas I think Carlton just said, no, just fucking keep smashing him up around the ball. You're killing him in contested possession and all that sort of shit. Curnow is killing him up forward because if he doesn't mark it, he gets freeze. So they took us on at our own game and they beat us at it. So I think opposition are going to look at that and just say, okay, if we get them 3 goals down, we just need to keep our fucking foot down and leave him in the dust.
Yep.
Last thoughts?
Just go out in a tone for last week and win by 148 points. I'm not going to accept anything less. Unless they give 147, then I'll
think about it.
I'll think about it.
Okay. All right. Cool. Well, that's it from us. We'll be back next week. Later.
Uru.